Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, man. You don't have scissors, do you?
It would be a crime if I didn't have a cup of coffee. I'd be like, huh?
Help yourself. Thanks for coming out to 1 Million Cups. For those of you, if this is your first time here, I hope you enjoy it. And just to give you a little idea of how the event works, we are going to have our presenter present for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then we're going to open up a discussion with the audience. It's your chance to ask questions, poke holes in Matt's ideas. It's all fair game, and kind of help build the community around entrepreneurship. And once the questions are over, you'll have a chance to meet with our presenter individually if you have some additional questions. One of the fun things that we like to do at the beginning of 1 Million Cups is see who's actually in our audience. I think you guys all have pretty neat stories. So we probably need the microphone for intros. We'll start in the back. You get to be the lucky number one. Just tell us your name, what you do, and then you can pass the mic on to your buddy.
All right, thank you. Hello, yes. My name is Darren Ike. I'm the founder of Innovation Learning. We help organizations like Dartmouth College, UW, Procter & Gamble, etc. with innovation programs, innovation training, stuff like that.
I'm Mike Ivey. I'm a business writer with the Capital Times newspaper, online at Madison.com.
My name is Thomas Yates. I'm the founder of Telematic.io. We provide solutions for the insurance industry.
Stand up. Casey Havener. I own a bunch of small businesses and have a lot of free time now, so I'm just trying to get back into the community and see what's going on and see how I can help.
My name is Maurice Cheeks. I am the director of the Wisconsin Innovation Network, and I'm a member of the Madison City Council.
My name is Femi Shikoya. I am a data analyst at an energy consulting firm right now.
My name is Nico, and I work at a company called Redox. We do healthcare APIs.
My name is Garrett Lee. I'm the creator and founder of GoodPoint, and I'm a council member at 100 State.
My name is Megan O'Rear. I'm one of the organizers for 1 Million Cups. I'm also the community manager at 100 State. Right over there. I'm Sarah Nutty. I work at a health IT company downtown Madison, and I'm also one of the organizers of 1 Million Cups here.
Hi, I'm Steve Claude, co-founder of a platform for hosting and managing silent auctions called 32 Auctions.
My name's Carl Rice. I formed a company called Project Solutions that does real estate development consulting, and I spend most of my time planning events and raising funds for progressive causes.
I'm Drew Corson. I'm an attorney at Knight & Boucher, and I work mostly with startups.
Hi, I'm Rachel Neal. I work at a healthcare IT company, Nordic Consulting, and I'm also one of the organizers of 1 Million Cups. So, now that we've gotten through introductions, everybody's got their coffee in hand, I am going to turn the presentation over to Matt and Analytics.
Thanks. And you actually, this one will work.
Oh, and you probably don't even need the mic. You're good. Sorry.
Right here?
Yeah.
You guys hear me? All right, my name is Matt McCoy. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer at Scanalytics, Inc. And I wasn't sure what kind of crowd we were going to have, so I have a lot of slides here. We'll go through some of them quick, and we'll have time to talk after, too, for any of you that have questions. But our slogan there is activate the soul of your brand, which is many of the puns that we try to use. We are in the business of foot traffic. Where do people go? Where do they spend their time? And what makes that significant for certain spaces? Primarily, you see us currently, in the last 3 years we've been in business, we are in the trade show industry, experiential marketing, so things like pop-up stores and engagement designs that you could see here at the library or out on the street, kiosks kind of that nature, and also retail, and we now have partnerships in the medical industry to do home health care, nursing homes, and assisted living. But I'm going to focus primarily on retail, and then we can kind of chat a little bit how that applies and how we've basically made our model so that you're focusing on the data, right? You're focusing on what we are kind of showing in the trends of where people go and spend their time and how that's significant to certain industries. So for retail specifically, we see things like this, brands going beyond the box. So what that means is that you're not going into Best Buy anymore and trying to find maybe the right product, right? You're going into Best Buy with an idea. You've done some research, typically. You're going in there to speak with an individual about some of the new products. You're going in there and just think about over the last 5-10 years, now there's like a Samsung mini booth and an Apple mini booth, right? They're going kind of beyond the box, taking the brand in their own hands rather than simply putting products on the shelf. At that tone, they're also doing interactive retail, things like Wi-Fi, beacons, as well as interactive signage, and a lot of technology in the space trying to turn it more into that engaging experience physically while you're there. There's self-serving and there's kind of field expertise. These kind of go hand in hand because the self-service, you can see the kiosks, the end aisle displays, where because you have your phone and your tablet, you're able to do the research on the products that are available. So you also have the ability to go in, check out, and how many checkouts are you seeing now where you can just, especially in grocery stores, where you don't have to talk to anybody, you can go in, grab your stuff, and get out. And then there's the field expertise. So you have the ability to go into retail and do a lot of the things on your own, but that means that the individuals that are on staff there, the employees, need to be smarter, need to have the understanding of where people are going, spending their time, what they're looking for, and not just simply direct you, but give you advice. So those are kind of the trends that we see in the space and what's made our technology significant. Some of the key trends, just to touch on this a little bit more, 85% of the sales are to be made in the store in 2025. So we hear a lot about mobile, we hear a lot about online. E-commerce in 2012 was only 5% of the total sales. And they're estimating that to grow to 10%, which is massive. That's a big growth, right? That's double. But in terms of where things are still being bought, where people are making their decisions, 70% of purchase decisions, I am now deciding to buy this product, that's happening in the store. It's still a very important touch point that some players in the industry are focusing more online. We're bringing kind of online into the offline world. But 50% of the purchases and 60% by 2017 are being influenced online, meaning that you're doing your research, you have an idea of the ads and all of the media that's being put in front of us. Online, you're learning a lot about products. You don't have to go in the store to see what's the latest and greatest. And when we look at the opportunities there, these are kind of the points that touched on those other points that I was talking about. You want to make your staff smarter. You want to enhance that experience for the customers. And of course, like any business, grow revenue and decrease cost. So that's kind of the end game. And I put in here the discovery phase is a critical step. For those of you that are working closely with data, hearing the buzzword of actionable insights, right? There's a step in terms of monitoring. There's a step in seeing what we will see, right? There's not technology out there that's going to give you an answer right out of the gates. Focusing on the fact that there is a discovery phase and being open to that process. And that's what I'll kind of touch on in our model. So how do we do it? We have what we call the Scanalytics Soul Sensors. There's our pun ingrained right into our product. And we are 98% accurate in our reporting, 100% in terms of gathering the impression information. So think about the touchscreen on your phone. right? Essentially what we're doing is we're taking, it's 26 mils thick, 26 thousandths of an inch thin laminate, and embedding that into existing flooring or into new flooring to be able to understand 100% of the traffic that moves through the space anonymously. We don't know that there are who each of the individuals are in here, but we know that there are. If I would have put a mat in and I would have got here on time, I would know how many of you are in here. But by being able to understand those trends, how that relates to the marketing efforts that went into this type of presentation, the venue that we're in, all of those are data points in terms of, how did this operate? What could we have done better? And it's a plug-and-play installation, which I'll touch on more as well. Being able to adopt the technology quickly by simply putting it down, turning it on, and beginning to run analysis immediately at a physical touch point, right? And what happens in the back end is really the bread and butter. That's the analysis in terms of what those inputs mean. And that's where we focus most of our energy. But this technology is proprietary to us. The mat is 2 feet by 2 feet. You can see the connectors on each end. They're able to plug into one another. So we can get into deployments where we might just lay one of them down. And when we lay one of them down, you could lay it down. We've done deployments for 8 hours, just to get a quick sample, that discovery phase. And now we have one going on 2.5 years. It's just been sitting in their front entryway for that long. But if you lay one mat down, you can get an understanding of people coming to that direct spot, how long they're there, how long you're holding your finger on the phone. Then the averages, how that fluctuates over time, being able to integrate that with peak times, directionality. But that's your sample, right? Is that 2 feet by 2 feet. So as you get into larger deployments, we begin to connect them. And with more mats comes more data. And then we have several examples I'll show you here where we begin to lay out hundreds, tens, hundreds in the space to be able to create and totally understand that space. So what do we do with the data? What's the goal of that? And that's to create these engaging environments. It's not just understanding where they go and reporting that in terms of here's how many people came, now you know, good luck. Here's how many people came. Here are the tipping points and the thresholds that we're seeing in the data in terms of people that walk in and maybe leave. I'll touch on some of those case studies as well. But then turning that into that interactive space, that engaging environment, basically in the world of IoT, in the physical space. So being able to connect the floor essentially as you are the mouse on your web page. And if you click, if you're there for a certain amount of time, something can change. The lights can come on. The heat can change when we get to a certain occupancy, so we're not all sweating because maybe they assumed there wasn't going to be that many people today. Things of that nature. So a little bit more on us. We've been deployed across North America, Europe, parts of Southeast Asia, and Australia in the last 3 years. And much of that is attributed to the plug-and-play nature. An out-of-box solution that allows them to find data in real time, short-term or long-term. So here's a couple examples. You can see here, we're just applied right under this branded sticker in front of this kiosk. So we do a number of applications where we integrate within branded stickers, turning that into additional marketing space, or we become inconspicuous with the black utility mat, which I'm sure each of you walked over half a dozen of these this morning already. And what we're able to do is tell the occupancy in this scenario. They had this up for 2 days and they wanted to know how many people came to look at their products. They couldn't buy the products, but they wanted to create that engaging out-of-the-box experience for their products. Here's the interactive kiosks, which I'm sure you guys are used to seeing as well. And here we get an understanding of how long does it take them to touch the screen. How many people walk by and don't interact with it at all? Right? So we start to use those comparisons over time and that traffic analysis to tell them what's working and what's not. Here's another example of the black utility mat within a retail space, rather than just a couple in that smaller black mat, we have 6 of them here. And then that can turn into more data. That can turn into things like visitors, directionality, the vectors as they're walking in. 70% in this particular picture I showed you, 70% went to the left. And in this store, it was made for males and females. It was actually 55% of their demographic was for males, and 70% went to the left. Guess what was on the left? Female merchandise. So what does that mean, right? What are the things that they can do differently? Do they want to change the flow of their store? Do they want to change and turn that into something that's universal? Or are they getting more females? Right? So that tells them something and things that we could take action on. I'll touch on this deployment again later. And then we do things like this with entire departments. This is 40 of our Soul sensors deployed right underneath the flooring where they were using carpet tiles anyways. We're standing on carpet tiles now. And we turn that whole department into a touchscreen. How many people come into that department, and then what engagement zones interest them the most? And how does that then relate to the total store? We were also doing the front entry. So how many people come into the store, how many people make it back here, and then how many people make it to these specific zones? So here's kind of an example of what our algorithm looks like. These are individuals within these circles. So this is a small example of just what 3 mats would do. Okay? And what we're able to do is take all of these impressions on the floor, just like when you put 2 fingers and 3 fingers, it knows it's 3 fingers, but it's still the same user, right? So we can attribute that to the individuals in the space and make sense of those durations in those specific zones. And then we construct kind of those individuals within an array. This is taken from that 40 mat deployment in the department. This is the behavior that we're seeing, where people go, spend their time. This individual came in, was really looking at it. He counts as an entryway into the space, but he didn't go anywhere significant. And then up here, we're able to timestamp all of this, not only by the time of the day, but down to the millisecond in terms of how long they're there. How long did that path take throughout that zone? And what we found in this specific example is that on average, individuals were within that zone for 45 seconds. But 20% of them were there for 2 minutes. So you can see how the data starts to skew. There's a lot of individuals that come in, they're part of that engagement, but they don't stay for long. And then there's a lot that when they come in, they spend quite a bit of time. So how do we give you this information other than me talking up here and tooting my own horn? We have all of this online on our custom dashboard. Stay tuned for the next pun, which is reporting a step further. See, we try out some different versions, not just the Soul. And each of the deployments that we work with comes with a custom login. Think Google Docs, right? Each of you has a account, and you then have the ability to share your document or use it yourself, or create a new user. I invite Rachel to take a look at my report that I just generated, or the real-time dashboard. You get to choose what you share. If she doesn't have an account, I invite her to make one. And then this opens the feedback channel. So any of you that have worked within retail know that they are historically and painfully slow. So being able to open some of the communication so that they can see what's happening. They don't have to wait 2 weeks for the individual to get on stage and give me the presentation. I can look, see in real time. Our dashboards come with real-time looks and comparisons, giving you the numbers and ways that you can see kind of them at a glimpse at a higher level. And then we also do dynamic spreadsheets, giving you the ability to then toggle, each of these zones, percentage of the whole, percentage of one to another, and also being able to categorize them accordingly. This is all automated. This is all populated in real time, and you're also allowed to export it. for those of you that are data junkies like me, and I just want to put my hands on the data. Then we also do things like this, heat maps, visualizations. This is an example of that department that we're doing. Here's the table, here's the bench, and now we get an understanding of visitors, right? So this is the amount of traffic that's happening in comparison to all the zones. You can see that there's a lot of traffic that happens here, some that starts to flow in. You can begin to kind of see, and when you start to chart this over time, see how that fluctuates over the course of the day. Then you can also do it by duration. So look at how these things are different. Right? This is where people are passing, this is where people are walking, this is where people are stopping, this is where they're standing, this is where they're dwelling. So what's significant about that? What are the things that have changed over time, and how can they optimize their space accordingly? So to kind of go back to that store that I mentioned with the 6 mats and the entryway, one of the use cases that we found, originally they just wanted us to tell them how many people came in the store. How did that fluctuate over time, and how did that kind of relate to their marketing efforts as a whole? And what we found during our deployment and with our algorithms was that individuals that walked in the store and, almost lost it, that would have been fun. People that walked in the store stood in the entryway. This was a storefront. So basically all of the products that were in there could be seen from front to back. Very open by design, very high involvement goods, meaning that they're expensive. And what they found was that when individuals walked in and stopped upon entry for 4 seconds or longer, 60% of the time they'd walk right back out. So individuals that walked in the store, stopped and went, I didn't do my research, or they didn't notice me when I walked in. I was hoping I could see somebody because I'm here for field expertise. They would walk out. I'll come back, I'll do my research, maybe another time. And what we were able to do was at that tipping point, as we were approaching that tipping point in real time, was that we would take the phone numbers of the individuals on staff that day, and instead of playing them that ubiquitous bing that happens when you walk in, walk out, or a leaf blows by, we would send them a text message and say, you have an individual that stopped upon entry, take time to greet him. And when we activated that, they increased their conversions to 90% instead of what was 40%. Another example was using kind of the patience rate in queue optimization. So it's not just the trends, it's not just the look at where they go and spend their time, but what does that mean? What's the tipping point? What happens next? And that you can see here with individuals waiting in line. We could find that on average, the wait time when there's 5 people, for that 5th person to get to the front of the line, it took 1 minute and 15 seconds. And if they were waiting for 25 seconds, 90% were willing to wait up to 1 minute. Okay, this starts to get a little, I leave it, the first thing in entrepreneurship, hire individuals that are smarter than you, right? So we have a lot of data scientists, software engineers on staff that can take us through these scenarios. But essentially what happened was that we found the tipping point up to 1 minute. You could retain 90% of the individuals. At 5 on that day, it was 1 minute and 15. Odds are pretty good you're going to lose that last person. So we send a text message to the manager and said, you should open another register. So the way that we kind of frame ourselves, obviously we start with the mat, right? The plug and play system, the tool that can be used for a day or years at a time. And then we use that to generate the data, focus on the algorithms, focus on the reporting, and then use other tools as well. So we have things like time, temperature, anything that you can really connect to the space to be Scanalytics, right? We want to be the analytics platform that can take these inputs in the physical space and redefine presence detection. What does that mean? What can we do to optimize the space? rather than just count how many people come in the door. So I felt like I went through that pretty quick. I think the coffee worked pretty well.
No, this is perfect. You're probably just ready for questions now.
Yeah. So again, my name's Matt McCoy. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out. Those on cyberspace as well.
So yeah, very well thought out. What catalyzed this idea in the first place back in the day? Like, hey, we should do a business around sensors and flooring and analytics. Yeah. How'd that idea get started?
Sure. So me and my co-founder have actually known each other since we were 8, and we started our first company together when we were 15. We started a landscape company and just started with a couple shovels and lawnmowers and started selling ourselves. And by the end of it, 8 years later, we sold it off. We had half a dozen trucks, and we hired our friends in the beginning and started bringing on multiple people towards the end. And basically we went our separate ways in college, and this started 3 years ago when my co-founder was at a retailer that shall not be named, because we also currently work with them. But at the time he was in the retailer, and he was looking at a product, and he saw 5 staff members chatting with themselves. And he's sitting here for a good chunk of time going, I want to make this purchase. I'm not going to go interrupt them, because apparently that's important. And he left, he went home, and he bought it online. He computed the numbers in terms of if that happened X% of the time, took kind of that loss in revenue just by not having a smart space. He's very analytical, if you can't tell. And he went, and actually what he did was he pulled apart his sister's Dance Dance Revolution mat and realized that he could send all the signals to his computer. And from there, I worked at a market research company here in Madison, actually, and did focus groups, qualitative, quantitative studies, surveys. And he reached back out to me, said, I have this technology. How would I get it in the door? Who would I sell it to? What do we have to do with it? I got him a couple meetings with clients that I had in the research field. They said, if you can make it do this, this, and this, you'll really have something. 4 months later, we made it do this, this, and this. We had our first paycheck.
What are the physical costs of doing this, and how long do these mats last? And
sure. So the technology itself, I mean, it hasn't been created this way before. So we actually have gone through 3 different manufacturers, all of which that have used similar technology. It originally is used for fingers. Think of the the buttons on your microwave, flush buttons, right? And essentially we repurposed that, made them blow it up, and each individual sensor can take 40 million impressions, which then extrapolated over our we haven't been around long enough to tell you when they're necessarily going to break through wear and tear, but used in we were just in Barcelona at Mobile World Congress. We had 200 systems deployed out there, and we accumulated, I think we were averaging about 300,000 impressions an hour, which is not retail. If that's retail, you're doing really good, and we should talk. We should talk. But that extrapolated over the duration of a deployment. It should last about 12 years. So we haven't been around for 12 years, though, so don't quote me on it. But
so what does it cost to actually get the mat, and what is like your model? Do you charge by mat, by size of company?
Yeah, so we have a dynamic pricing model, like much of you have probably heard before. But the way that we price it out is that you lease the hardware and you subscribe to the data. So it depends on the amount of soul sensors that you're using and for how long. And then that determines the amount of data that we're going to be pulling and the amount of analysis that we're creating. So it's a subscription model that allows us to do some of these 8-hour installations or a few week installations because it's an easy plug-and-play system. We don't want to make you buy it and use it to make your money back. We lease the hardware, and then you own the data.
Do you also offer like feedback, consulting on the data as a separate kind of product?
Yeah, so I think anybody in here that does data or is familiar with market research, that's a portion that just doesn't go away. We have all of the tools on there, and we do everything that we can from account management standpoint to make sure they understand the tools that they have. But a lot of our larger clients, you know, like Mobile World Congress, like I mentioned, or clients that have had this in for years at a time, we consult because we're looking at it anyways. We're trying to figure out the next thing that we can find in terms of tipping points and algorithms. So we are always accessible. We do consultation with the subscription. But there's the way that the consultation really works is that we use a 2-week calibration period. So if you installed it for a day, 2 weeks later you'll get the data. It's clean, it's perfect, let's talk about it. If you're installing it for years after the installation, 2 weeks later, let's talk about it. Here's the tools that you have. That consultation is free with all of them.
So as a pretty regular attendee of A Million Cups, this is one of the best, like, well thought out, well developed products and presentations that I've witnessed. My question is, you know, what are challenges that you face? Like, are there any questions you have for us that, like, hey, we're looking for this sort of feedback? Because that's sort of the what we show up for is, like, if we can offer anything. But it seems that you guys are pretty advanced.
Yeah. I mean, we've the background and the way that we've kind of created the model has allowed us to do a lot of trial and error, adopt that discovery phase, and you know, beat up the technology and then put the software and the data through the ringer. But we're still experiencing the same things that any startup or growing business does, and that's some of the growing pains. So we're currently looking at bringing on more people. We currently have 15 on staff. We're going to be over 20 by the end of the year. And really what we need is kind of that support, not only to develop and continue to advance, because if you don't advance, you're just going to get blown by. And then things like the account management, sales side. Basically from our infancy, our demand has far outweighed our supply. So it's keeping up with getting the technology out there and supporting it, having those conversations. And that takes manpower. So, you know, looking for talent, looking for best practices in terms of outsourcing, those are all things that we still face just like everybody else.
Great, and I think this will be our last question.
That's lucky. I see security applications as well with this. What have you done so far in the security space? Since I saw you have a person entering the east after hours. Yep. So what are the security applications? How do you integrate that? And potentially would that become something where you're looking in the residential space of, oh, we'll have this in the home as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's an awesome segue and note to end on, actually. So the retail and events was where a lot of my knowledge came from. I had contacts, there was a pain point, and made a ton of sense to enter that way. But as we've proven out the hardware, the software, and the data, we've started to see more than what we originally thought, right? So there's security, there's presence detection in the home. We recently partnered with Microsoft for their home automation initiative. Beyond just security, but just managing your costs. If you're not in the room, the lights are going to turn off, right? Things like that. So what we've done is that we recently opened what we call our Enterprise SDK, allowing individuals and companies to get their hands on the technology, use our API, and repurpose that for scenarios that you're talking about. You know, like security purposes. I have a number of contacts. This makes sense. All we got to do is send an alert, not when someone's there for a specific amount of time, but when they're there when they shouldn't be, right? So by using this data and repurposing it for the conversations that you're having, it's a little off topic, I suppose, than security itself, but we've given security notifications for our clients, which is just part of the deal. We're seeing it anyways. We haven't to date had any for security purposes alone, but the tools are there. It's able to do it. It would just be repurposing for that particular function.
Great. Well, thank you again, Matt. Another round of applause.
Thank you.
If you have any other questions, maybe Matt can stick around for a minute or two to talk personally. But thank you guys for coming.
Thanks.